Well, welcome everyone, and thanks for giving up your Friday afternoons or evenings or wherever you may be in the world, whichever time it is, but thanks for giving your time. Just one word of warning, this one is going to be a reasonably long presentation. I was lucky enough earlier in the week to go through a full rehearsal with John, and it's jam-packed with information, but it is reasonably long. We're probably going to be here for maybe an hour and a half. So don't be scared of that. It just doesn't stop presenting good information. So if you're considering cruising, or if you're an existing yacht owner who's already been involved with the guys on their rallies, or if you're someone who's looking to buy a boat and wants to know more about the South Pacific, I think you're going to get a lot of great information out of this afternoon's presentation. Now, as we do each webinar, if you want to ask questions, you're quite welcome. You'll see on your screen is a Q&A box. You can type your question in there at any time, and Rachel in the background and myself will endeavour to respond to those, and we'll make a decision at the time whether we're going to interrupt John's presentation to ask the question if it's relevant, or we may decide to hold it over to a Q&A session at the end. So don't be afraid if we don't respond straight away, but we will see all of your questions and we welcome those questions. So please type in and say hello and give us some feedback. Just as we always do, our next webinar in 2 weeks' time, it was going to be a walkthrough of the NY40 power catamaran, but unfortunately because of shipping delays, that power catamaran isn't going to be in Australia in time. So instead, we're going to do a discovery session on the new Samana 59 that was launched in August this year and presented at the condensed version of the Cannes Boat Show in September. And so we're going to do a walkthrough, or basically a panel discussion about that boat. So anyone that's in the market for the new Samana 59, that'll be a great session. And then 2 weeks after that, on the 4th of December, we're going to have a Sailing the Whitsunday session. And if you've missed any of our webinars that we've been doing since around about April of this year, you can find them all on the Multihull Solutions YouTube channel. There's now a plethora of great webinars there that you can jump on and look at. So a great resource. Myself, I'm Greg Boller. I'm the New Yacht Sales Manager here at Multihull Solutions. And in the background, producing today's webinar is Rachel. So welcome from Rachel and I. And what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to stop the share on my screen, and John is going to take over the share. We're technically incredible here. So we've got Nigel in New Zealand today. We've got John. I think I'm going to give it away. John, you're moored on your yacht, or anchored on your yacht on the central Queensland coast. And I'm in my usual corner of the earth down in New South Wales. So great to have us all at different locations being able to present today. So with no further ado, John, I'd like to hand over to you. Nigel and I are going to turn off our cameras, and we're going to let you get going with what it will be a really exciting presentation.
Well, thank you, Greg. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you to Multihull Solutions for making this webinar possible. It's a pleasure to be here and to share this information with you all. The presentation this afternoon is broken into 2 sessions. We've had quite a few people email us that haven't been offshore before, haven't sailed outside of their own home waters, and a little bit interested about preparation and those sorts of things for doing this. But the primary purpose of this webinar is about talking to you about the destinations and getting there and enjoying them when you're there. So we'll kick off now with the first section of the webinar, which is about getting ready to go. But firstly, I'll just a quick introduction about us, and us being John and Leanne, the Down Under Rally. We're full-time liveaboard cruisers for the past 12 years. During that time, we've sailed about 50,000 nautical miles on both monohulls and multi-hulls. We originally set off from Australia in 2009 to New Caledonia and Vanuatu, and then down to New Zealand. And we sold the vessel that we're on at that time in New Zealand, and we bought another one in California in 2010, and that saw us having an east to west Pacific crossing from 2010 to 2014. And we ran the first Down Under Rally in 2015, and we've since done Australia, New Caledonia, Vanuatu, Fiji, and returned to Australia 5 times. So that's who we are and where we've been and what we've done and how we come to be talking to you here today. So part 1, an introduction to offshore cruising. I guess the first question might be, why offshore cruising? Look, for us, it's adventure, community, memories, new cultures. The image up in the top left of the screen is the vessel that we came across the Pacific on, anchored in the Marquesas Islands. Leanne hoisting the Panama flag there as we arrived, getting together with all the other cruisers on the beach at the dinghies and sharing war stories and 1 or 2 beers and red wines. Having to haul the dinghy out of the water at island of Nui in the middle of the Pacific, where there's no beaches to land on. You actually have to go and get a crane and lift it up and put it on the dock while you go exploring the shore. You know, memories that we've made with our son, who joined us from time to time on the trip, and catching that nice sailfish there. And then of course the culture that you experience along the way, the people and the places that we visit. So, you know, for us, that's offshore cruising. That's why we do it. I don't particularly like to travel by aeroplane. I dislike having to pack and unpack my suitcase. And by being able to have everything on board the boat, it makes it much easier to just enjoy everything. We tend to spend longer at our destinations and become more immersed in the cultures and the people, and feel we get a lot more out of it. So that's offshore cruising for us. So I'll just quickly make a suggestion for those that are thinking about heading off into the blue, because I'm sure if you're anything like us, you ask questions of anybody and anyone that'll listen. And what I learnt the hard way was that there's a lot of people who especially frequent bars and yacht clubs and marinas, that they've got all sorts of advice for you, but the fact is they've actually never left home. So when you're setting out on a journey, do not seek advice from someone who's never left home. I soon learnt to ask the people before I started asking them what they thought was, where had they been and what had they seen. And I was able to filter out the irrelevant information, the ones that were telling me, "I don't go out there, you're going to die," purely because they were frightened of going out there themselves, and had justified their own reason for not doing it by coming up with all these horror stories. So yeah, just qualify who you're talking to first. So what does it cost to cruise? These are questions that we're regularly asked. I guess the easiest way to answer that is, are you a sailor who cruises or a cruiser who sails? In the top right hand corner there's a 28-foot little boat. That guy sailed across the Pacific. He joined our rally to New Caledonia from Fiji. He then came on to Australia, and he single-handed that little boat the whole way. No fridges, no creature comforts, but he got to see and experience the same things everyone else did. We all were in the same anchorages and enjoying the same beaches. So, you know, you can do it. It's just a matter of what's your lifestyle now? You know, are you going to be cruising or you're going to be camping? And, you know, these are the things that oftentimes can wear a little bit thin when people first start going long-term cruising, and there's not enough water to wash your hair because there's no water makers, and there's not enough power to leave the lights on, and there's all sorts of pressure coming from one or the other of the crew members on the other person saying, "Don't do that, don't do this, we can't do that, we can't do that," and all of a sudden it becomes like camping and much less like cruising. So it's about you and what you expect and how you want to live. If you like to go out to dinner now and you like to have some nice things, well, there's no reason why you can't still do that while you're cruising if the budget allows. There's plenty of opportunities to live the same sort of lifestyle, just with the boat being your home. So you have to think about that and just see if what category you think you fall into, but don't let it stop you doing it. You can do it on all sorts of budgets. So the cost to offshore cruise, and I guess preparation costs. Sailing, as we hopefully, I know, and many of you also know, that it's the most expensive way to get somewhere for free. And that is never more true than with these big sailing catamarans and things. There's always something that needs fixing and something that demands some attention. So if we're going to be leaving from Australia, for instance, and we want to head off to the Pacific, our vessel's got to be an Australian registered vessel. We won't be able to get a clearance from the Australian Border Force to depart the country unless we have an Australian registration, which is totally different to our state registration. So regardless of whether your boat's registered in Queensland or New South Wales, it also needs to be Australian registered. And that's a process. If the boat's not Australian registered and you have to begin that process, bear in mind it could take anywhere from 4 to 8 to 12 weeks, depending upon the boat and its history. So you need to get that underway if you're fair income about heading offshore cruising, because you literally won't be able to leave the country without it. And if you do leave the country without it, you won't be able to arrive in the next country. They'll just turn you away because you won't have received an outward clearance certificate from Australia. So
John.
So go ahead, Greg.
So John, if I was to purchase a second-hand vessel that was already Australian registered by the previous owner, what's your, from talking to all your clients and that, is it the process of transferring registration?
Yes, that's very simple. It's just a copy of the bill of sale and a form and a cheque sent to AMSA, and they just transfer the registration. So that's a simple process.
Very good, thank you.
You're welcome. So to initially register the vessel as an Australian registered ship, it's going to cost you somewhere between $1,500 and $2,000, depending upon what paperwork and things you need to get together. And that's, as I say, somewhere between 4 to 12 weeks you could allow that might take to do that. The good thing about it is it's a once only fee. So it's not like you have to pay that annually like your Queensland or New South Wales registration. Once you've got it, that's it. It's not an ongoing fee. So the next thing is vessel insurance. And again, this is one that is quite a shock for many of the people that have joined our rallies and then find out what it's going to cost them to get blue water insurance, especially if this to be your first blue water voyage and you're going 2 people. Obviously, you represent a higher risk to the insurer than perhaps someone who's well experienced and maybe has got experienced crew on board. But look, as a rule, to have blue water insurance, you're going to have to allow somewhere between 2 and 2.5% of the sum insured of your vessel. So if you've got a $100,000 boat, you're going to be paying somewhere between $2,000 and $2,500 for the year, so that you've got blue water insurance. It can get a bit expensive. So these are the things you need to make sure are in the budget. Otherwise, the dream could be scuttled before you even leave the dock. And travel insurance, again, it's a must-have. You can't go to New Caledonia these days without having travel insurance. And like all sorts of insurance, there's apples for apples, and the travel insurance you get, you may find that you injure yourself on the boat in the middle of the ocean and you arrive in the country that you're going to get treated at, and your travel insurance says, well, that actually, that injury didn't happen whilst you were in that country. That injury happened whilst you were in no man's land out in the ocean, so we're not going to pay for the cost of this repatriation or this treatment, because we were only to pay for it if you injured yourself at your destination. So be very aware that the travel insurance you choose is going to cover you for being airlifted off your boat, should you need to be. If your injury happens to occur whilst you're on board the boat in offshore waters, there's a lot of things to check about that. You'll see down in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen popped up a logo there for Bailey's Insurance. If you go to our website using the URL below on the screen, there's all the information there about the services they provide. We've been using them for over 5 years, 6 years now, and they've looked after us well, including managed a couple of claims that we've had over the time. And then there's the crew preparation costs, and this is going to vary also. We need to do a sea survival training courses, or we should be doing at least at the very minimum a sea survival training course. We need to have our PFDs, we need to have our personal AIS devices, we need to have all of these bits and pieces to make sure that we're safe and well prepared for the undertaking. So each person on the boat, you can allow somewhere between that, depending upon what you've got now, up to $2,000 just to be ready to depart. And then the vessel preparation. And look, that goes from rarely zero and often well in excess of $50,000 to get the boat ready with water makers and solar panels and wind generators and modifying sails and all the sorts of things that need to be done to make sure that your vessel's up to the task. And we spend a considerable amount every year at the boatworks on the Gold Coast, where there's all the trades and services and professionals there that look after our needs, and the boat's hauled out and made ready to go. And look, we'll spend $15,000 every year minimum just upkeeping the boat for offshore status. That's not including our insurance or anything like that. It's just to keep the boat ocean worthy. So there's some preparation costs to give some consideration to. So we hear people talking about bad experiences and storms and how they got the fright of their life and they're never going again, which leads us to ask, what's the most common reason for these bad experiences? And in our opinion, it's one of these things. It's a calendar and sailing to a schedule. And by sailing to a schedule, I mean, oh, look, we can't wait. We've got to go. We've got crew that need to fly home from New Caledonia next Friday. And, we've paid for their tickets. We'll lose their tickets. We've got friends coming to fly in to visit us. We've got to be there to pick them up. Just a couple of examples of why people make the decision to sail to a schedule rather than sailing to the conditions and the weather. So that's probably at the heart of most every story you get when you start hearing about people having been in bad situations. So how do we avoid bad experiences? And look, I'm not immune to this. The picture on the screen will show you a trip that we did where we attempted to go straight from Newcastle in New South Wales to Fiji back in April 2015. I did a number of things wrong. First and foremost, I decided to leave in the middle of April, which was way too early to try and attempt this voyage. Secondly, I chose to leave from a port well south, which saw me having to spend an extended period of time in the Tasman Sea. Thirdly, I left with a storm, with a low pressure system forecast to impact our voyage in 48 hours if we hadn't been able to get to above 25 degrees. And all of these things conspired against us and we didn't succeed. Long story short was we left Newcastle and battled current for the first 12 hours. So for the first 12 hours, we were doing 4 knots instead of our expected 8 knots, which puts us 12 hours behind straight away. And then we managed to have a propeller shaft decide to come out of the boat in the middle of the night, which saw the boat taking on an enormous amount of water, and we had to stem that flow and remedy this propeller shaft, which we did. But of course, this storm had eventuated. And the storm that I'm talking about, some of you may remember a cruise ship being off of Sydney Heads in 11-metre seas and not being able to enter the heads back in 2015. Well, that's the storm we were in. Look, there's lots of things here. We couldn't go back for lots of reasons. If you're really interested to know what we did wrong and how we got through it, have a look at that URL on the bottom of the screen, Google that, and the whole story's there. So how to avoid bad experiences? Be patient. Don't have any schedules. Understand weather forecasts and understand weather routing. So we have 2 things here. We've got our weather forecast, which tells us the conditions that we can expect. Then we've got our weather routing that tells us the best route for us to choose to sail to either get there as fast as we can or to minimize we have what we call comfort settings. So we can say we don't want to be in more than 3 meters of sea or sustained winds above 25 knots. And then the computer models are going to send us on a route that is consistent with our goals. So we've got the forecast and then we've got which way are we going to sail to have the best possible trip. And then that becomes our passage planning. So now we're going to be sailing to that weather routing. But of course, if we're leaving for a 7-day voyage, typically the forecast is not that reliable come day 4, 5, 6 or 7. And we need to be able to employ passage management. So we need to be able to get updated weather forecasts, and then we need to be able to change our plan according to the conditions that are now forecast that we can expect. So these are things that if you don't already understand them and fully understand them, you need to get your head around what all these things mean to you and how they're going to impact your experience. So next question might be, is my boat suitable ready? What do you think of that one, Greg?
It's a ripper. I think I've seen that one somewhere. Is that in Tahiti?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, it gave us a few giggles when we saw that when we were driving around. So is my boat suitable already? Look, there's a lot of things, and multi-hulls feature pretty heavily in this presentation, and that's basically because I'm a cat sailor now, and we've gone to that side of the fence. But so for the monohull owners, forgive me, I've been there, and monohulls are just as capable as catamarans, and some say more so. But yeah, so that's the reason we've got some catamarans featuring. And when we're talking about is my boat ready and suitable, we'll look at this vessel in the left-hand side of the screen here. We can see he's got a screecher up, he's got a genoa up, he's got a mainsail up. You know, he's got a pretty good sail wardrobe there. What sort of sail wardrobe do we need to have in order to go out and offshore cruise?
And I'm just going to jump in. It's okay. You can talk about monohulls now, John, because we've now launched our business, the Yacht Sales Co. So we've now also crossed to the dark side. So we're now multi and mono.
Multihull and mono solutions.
Yeah. So we've done that. We've employed some specialists who are monohull specialists, and that so people can now talk to us about monos, but we'll still put them on to people who know.
And those monohull specialists, I guess they've got one leg shorter than the other, have they?
Yeah, exactly. Yes. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, sorry, I'll move on. So yeah, look, I mean, offshore cruising necessitates to have a third reef, in our opinion. Not that we're going to head out there in expecting to be in conditions where we should be running a third reef, but it also allows us to just slow the boat down, and sometimes we need to slow down to arrive at a reef pass in daylight. You know, there's a number of reasons why we would like to be able to slow our boat down that aren't related to weather. So, of course, as a relation to bad weather, we want to be able to reef it down as much as we can, but there's other reasons to have a third reef. And then are these reefing lines, are you able to reef these sails two-handed, short-handed? Can you reef your sails to any point of sail single-handed, or do you need two people, or do you need more than two people? Bearing in mind that, you know, fatigue becomes a big part of the challenges of offshore cruising when you've spent 4, 5, 6, 7 days, 3 hours on and 3 hours off with just two people, and you have some squally conditions, and we're reefing, and now we're having to unreef, and now we're reefing, and now we're having to unreef, and the person that's off watch is having to be called up every other hour to manage sails. So, you know, is it safe? Do you have to go outside to reef your sails? Can it be done by one person or two people? How many crew do you need to have on the board or board the boat on passage to manage your sails? And then power generation. Whilst we're coastal cruising, we're often got the opportunity to drop into a marina and plug into shore power. And you know, when we're offshore cruising, especially in more remote areas, we don't go to marinas. We've got to be fully self-sufficient. We need to be able to generate enough power to manage our needs, and we don't like to be camping. So we like to have plenty of power to be able to do all the things that we like to do, including running coffee machines and some people air conditioners. The amount of power you're going to consume on passage whilst you're in the ocean making the voyage is going to be quite alarming when you consider that you're going to be running this boat 24 hours a day, and you're going to have autopilots running 24 hours a day. You're going to have navigation lights running for 10 hours of the day. You've got people on board that are wanting to charge their computers and laptops, and you've got chart plotters running and so forth and so on. Power consumption at sea and the ability to replenish that power and draw whilst under sail is considerable. And then emergencies at sea. What would you do if one of your port lights or one of your hatches was broken, and you've got this gaping hole in the boat at some point because of a broken hatch or a broken window? How would you deal with that? Have you got a plan for it? These are the things that we need to think about, and they're just four of many, many things we need to have thought about and have a plan for. It's about preparing for the worst and hoping for the best, in our opinion. And we try and think of every possible scenario that could go wrong. And that might sound pessimistic, but it's seen us through to be able to be sitting here with you talking after many, many miles. So what can go wrong? What will we do if it does? Have a plan.
Can I just jump in there, John?
Yeah, mate.
I just like to pretty much back up what John's saying there. The preparation of the boat and sailing the boat safely for extended periods of time away from shore and away from shoreside assistance is actually the key to safe and enjoyable cruising. The piece of advice that I always give people, most people work in the workplace under that really powerful piece of legislation called the Health and Safety at Work Act. And you're all used to doing risk assessments and all used to carrying out functions where you've got to record every single thing that you do. Do the same thing to your boat. Risk assess your boat like it's a place of work, and then list the things that create hazards and then find control measures to deal with them. Exercising along the deck at night to do a reef if you can't do it from your cockpit. Write it down so your crew know how else to do it, so they don't need to raise offshore or off-watch people to do it. Do that risk assessment and record everything that you need to do in advance. That's what I'd say, John.
Yeah, that's wonderful input, Nigel. And I'm not sure, did we introduce Nigel earlier, Greg?
Yes,
Sorry.
we did. Yes, we did, John. So yeah, so
Nigel's from Island Cruising New Zealand and has got many, many ocean miles under his belt in some water that's notoriously that can be notoriously challenging. So he's well worth listening to in this regard. So am I ready to go offshore? And a question that we ask and people say is a bit strange is, do you know what you don't know? Well, how would you know what you don't know? Because you don't know it. So what you need to do is try and find out what it is you don't know. And do you know everything you need to know about safety equipment? Which are the right life jackets? Which are the right EFIRs? Which are the right flares? Which is the right life raft? Do you know everything you need to know about offshore communications, emergency procedures, weather forecasting, passage management, passage planning? Look, there's a lot to know. So how do you find this stuff out? Well, we'd be really happy if you chose to take our offshore cruising preparation course, which is online and on demand, and we cover all of this stuff in detail. You can do this at the comfort of your lounge chair, and I think you'll find it to be a very worthwhile investment and very beneficial. Even if you have got quite a lot of experience, the feedback we're getting from people that have done it is that we've brought to light a number of things that they hadn't considered. And look, at the end of the day, if you do it and you knew everything in the first place, well, you've got the peace of mind of knowing that that was the case. So in this course, I won't read through every one thing here, but you can see that it's comprehensive from category 1 and what does that mean and how does it apply to your boat, through to diesel engine troubleshooting, charts, electronics, power generation, battery systems, and then from the personal perspective, sea survival, watch keeping, safety gear, seasickness even, medical kits, and of course staying sane when cruising in small spaces with your significant other, and making sure that communication is such that they actually want to keep sailing with you. And then we've got more here: computers, tablets, vessel tracking, electronic communications, personal health, self and rescue. It's all there, and it's all very, very informative. So if you're interested, you can see the URL on the bottom of the screen there. That's where you go to do this. One of the most recent testimonials we've received from Ashley and David in July was that they found the course well prepared, to be an eye-opener, the level of detail. They learned a lot, and they found the presentation style really great as we pitched it to both the experienced and the newbie. So yep, give that some thought. It's only $295. It gives you full price for 10 sessions. So there's 10 one-hour sessions that you can watch on video. You can stop it, you can rewind it, you can do whatever you like with it. And then at the end of it, when you email us to tell you you're finished, we're going to send you a hard copy of it to be able to refer to for as long as you would like to, as well as some additional course reference material that we think you'll find valuable. And you'll get a course completion certificate that will give you a 10% discount from Topsail Insurance, provided you follow the conditions that are all on our website. So you can see that it will be pretty easy to recover your $295 just with that benefit alone. Alrighty, the other one that I'd suggest that you might like to do, and this is 100% free and available to everyone, is a vessel and crew offshore assessment. Our rally partners, AAB Boating, have created this tool to help you perform a self-assessment about your vessel and your skills all you need to do is go to this page of our website and click on this, this button when you get there, and it'll take you to a series of questions that you just answer using your keyboard, and then it'll make some recommendations about how you answer those questions as to what you might consider you need to do to make sure you are offshore ready. All right, and then nextly, I guess the question is, are you fit to cruise? We spend so much time and so much money getting our boats ready. We often neglect the fact that we need to be able to be physically up to the challenge, and it is a challenge at times. It's climbing in and out of dinghies when they're jumping up and down in a metre of swell at the back of the boat, having to get on and off docks all the time when you're coming into marinas with the dinghy. The dinghy becomes your car, and you spend a lot of time moving around and getting in and out of it. You know, we tend to also spend a lot of time sharing a beer or a wine or some nice potato chips on the beach with all the other cruisers at sundowner time, and it's probably not the most healthy way we could live. So we need to just be thinking about, are we looking after ourselves as well? My lovely wife Leanne is also known as Yoga for Yachties. She runs these yoga classes that you can now do online thanks to COVID. Everything's available online, so you can be actually practicing yoga with Leanne virtually in your boat by subscribing to her subscribe channel. If you think you'd like to be able to try and earn $1 while you're out cruising, she can actually teach you now to become a qualified yoga teacher. She is a qualified yoga teacher trainer, and she can get you a certificate so that you are now a qualified yoga teacher, and you can teach yoga at beaches and all sorts of things like she's done for many years whilst we're cruising along. And of course, you're going to need to look good. So she's got her Yoga for Yachties activewear. So have a look at Namaste Ocean Yoga, see if there's anything there that's of interest to you. All right, so we're going to need some cruising guides and some resources. Again, our website, and I think you're starting to get the hint that our website is the go-to place. We've filled it over the last 4 years with tons of really valuable information, including these cruising guides. Some of them you'll pay for, some of them are free. Just jump on that website there, downunderrally.com, cruising guides resources, and you'll be able to see which ones are free, and you'll be able to see which ones you need to pay for. And there's a lot more there than just those that appear on the screen. So island etiquette, and look, something that I wasn't aware of when we first began on cruising in New Caledonia and Vanuatu was, in Australia, nobody can own the land, the water and the water resources below the high tide mark. But when you're over in New Caledonia and Vanuatu, this is actually land that is, the local people have the rights to. It's their backyard. And you're a visitor and you're there at their grace. It is considered rude not to go ashore to introduce yourself. There may be a requirement to pay respect and perform a ceremony, which we'll talk about as we move through the presentation for the relevant countries. And you should ask permission, what you can do, where can you go? Is it okay to fish? Is it okay to go walking? Is it okay to get water from that tap? And ask about, what if I go fishing? Is there ciguatera? Is there sharks? Is there anything I need to know about? The best information you're going to get anywhere you go is that from the local people. So consider you're camping in someone's front yard when you pull up to an anchorage, and go and ask their permission to be there, and be respectful of the fact that many of these people, that's how they survive, is fishing out of those lagoons. We need to make sure we're leaving them the way we found them. Okay, first stop, we finished with the preparation. We're going cruising. And the first stop, if you're leaving from Australia with us, is New Caledonia. And I've got a few videos I'm going to play through the presentation here. They're not very long, but they give me a chance to rest my voice. And you also probably sick of listening to me. So we'll run this one. This is New Caledonia, something for everyone. that's just a little recap of 5 years of going backwards and forwards in New Caledonia and some of the highlights there. We really love it because it's a nice balance between remoteness. We're cruising in the lagoon, which is the second largest coral reef fringe lagoon in the world, which provides us with sheltered anchorages or out of the ocean swell. We've got a nice balance of culture where we go ashore with the locals and get involved in their lifestyle. But we also have got a first world experience where we can head out and party a bit, as you saw in some of the nightclubs and entertainment venues on the mainland. Look, I can't do it justice in 30 seconds. I couldn't do it justice in 3 hours. But New Caledonia is really something for everyone. It's a lovely balance between cruising and culture and community. So if you'd like to know more about New Caledonia, get it from the experts, which is New Caledonia Tourism website. You'll see there's a number of videos you can go to watch there. There's sailing information, there's cultural information. Everything you need to know about a visit to New Caledonia can be found at Nouvelle Caledonie Tourism website. I was lucky enough this year to become an accredited travel agent, if you like, for New Caledonia Tourism. So I had to do a couple of tests to test my knowledge, and I managed to become an expert level 1 qualified New Caledonia Seychelles tourism guide.
Very good.
There you go. Alrighty, so do we need to get a visa before we leave for New Caledonia? Australian passport holders will be granted a 90-day visa on arrival. You'll be required to exit the country within 90 days of your arrival. You can return at any time, and the unused period of the first 90 days will apply. You can stay for up to 180 days in any 365-day period, but not consecutively. So what that means is you can go for 90 days, and then you must leave for 90 days, and then you can return for another 90 days. So if you're going to be going to New Caledonia from Australia, you're going to be looking at a maximum 3 months, 90 days cruising there before you'll need to leave the country and be out of the country for a further 90 days before you can go back. You can apply for a long stay visa. Good luck. In the last 5 years, with all of the rallies that we've ran over there, one of our 200 odd boats that have joined, one of the crew on there got the long stay visa. The rest of them, one boat actually couldn't leave on time because their passports hadn't been returned whilst they'd been applying for it. It's a nightmare.
I'll ask the obvious question, John. When you say leaving and returning, does that mean you can check out and go sailing for 5 days around the ocean and come back in, or do you have to have gone to another country first?
So 2 points there, Greg. You must leave the country, so you must go to immigration and be stamped out of the country. And in order, that means that you must then show a stamp in your passport where you've arrived at another country.
Yes.
We can't just meander around. And secondly, you'll have to be gone for 90 days.
Yes.
So you can't just head off for 5 days and come back. You'll have to be out of the country and show that you were in another country for 90 days, which is why we go to Vanuatu, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. Make sure your passport's got more than 6 months on it before you leave, and travel insurance proof of medical cover is mandatory as of January 2019. You may not be given permission to enter the country without it. They'll ask to see it. And one-way letters are required if crew or friends are travelling on a one-way ticket. So if you've got people coming in to join you from Australia, not the crew that sailed with you, they're on the boat and they'll be processed when they arrive on the boat. But if you've got friends or family coming to visit you and they haven't got a return ticket, they're coming in on a one-way ticket, then you're going to have to get a letter from immigration that they will need to produce at the airport when they're departing to come to New Caledonia, or they won't be allowed on the plane. Again, we help you get through all this, navigate it all as part of the rally thing. But for those that aren't rally people, you just need to be aware of these things and make your own inquiries. And look, your vessel, it can stay for a maximum of 1 year and any 3-year period without having to be imported. If you're new to offshore sailing and visiting other countries, you need to get across these things. You can't just rock up and stay there with your boat for as long as you like. You've got visa issues for people, but you've also got importation issues for vessels. You can't just take your boat and have it in Fiji indefinitely. without having to import it and pay importation taxes and duties and whatever else is relevant. And that's the same in pretty much every country. So
we did a webinar a few months ago with Michael and Marita on sailing in the Mediterranean, and again, probably 20% of that discussion was all about the same thing. So no matter where you are, this is a very important part of the passage or voyage management strategy.
Yes, Greg, thank you for quantifying that. And look, in our offshore cruising preparation course, this is one of the things that we cover, and we tell you how to go about finding out the information that's relevant for each country, where to get that information, how to make sure it's current and up to date. It's all part of the learning experience. Alrighty, so if we're going to be leaving from Australia, what's the best place to depart from? And look, there's plenty of people with plenty of opinions about this. From experience, we choose to leave from the Gold Coast. Some say that departing from ports further south, such as Coffs Harbour, is the best choice. We've found that periods of westerly quadrant winds are often experienced in southeast Queensland during May and June, allowing to clear the coast sooner and provide us with calmer seas for the commencement of the voyage, because obviously the westerly winds are blowing the ocean flat, or flattish, as flat as it gets. That's not always the case. We may well leave on south southerlies. We may leave whenever we can, but oftentimes we get these westerly quadrants and they just make it for a very nice beginning. It's easy to sail south to the latitude of Coffs Harbour, and with emphasis on the following part, with the current, if putting in some southeast in the bank early, and by that I mean we need to allow for the weather that might be coming that hasn't been forecast. So as we're approaching, remembering that we're sailing in an area where we've got predominantly east-southeast trade winds, and we're leaving from Australia to go east. So we're headed into the predominant wind. The key word there being predominant. It doesn't mean it can't be done, as many people would have you believe. It just means that you need to be patient and that you need to understand how to manage it. And part of managing it is putting some east-southeast in the bank early, so that if the weather forecast changes and we end up with east-southeast winds later in the voyage, we're able to bear off and still get to our destination and put that wind onto a part of the boat where it's much more pleasant, i.e. the beam or behind. So we need to just allow for, we've got a forecast that suggests we could sail straight to New Caledonia, but we need to make sure that if it changes, we're not going to find ourselves in an uncomfortable passage. The passage distance, if sailing from the Gold Coast, if you're able to sail the Rum Line, is shorter, and we have been able to sail it a couple of times. Waiting in Coffs Harbour for a suitable weather window means either being in an open roadstead, aka rolly anchorage, or in the marina, which can be difficult to get a casual berth in. I've got nothing against Coffs Harbour, by the way. We enjoy our stays there a lot. It's just if you've got several boats waiting to leave to go, it can be waiting 2 or 3 weeks sometimes for the right weather window, and it's not necessarily the most comfortable place to be if you haven't been able to get a berth. And there's fewer marine services should you need something replaced or repaired at the last minute. That's our reasons. We're not saying it's gospel. That's just why we choose to depart from where we depart from.
All makes sense.
Okay, next question we get asked. How long is it going to take? And our answer, how fast do you sail? So, Southport to Noumea, Rum Line, 780 miles. If we're doing 5 knots, we're going to be 6.5 days, approximately. And 6 knots, 5.5. 7 knots, 4.5, 8 knots, and so on. So how fast do you go will determine how long it will take. 10 good reasons to cruise New Caledonia, and this information is compliments of the Rocket Guide, which we'll talk about as we move through. It's the most extraordinary cruising guide I've ever seen, and sure, we sell them and I'm getting paid to say it, but I was saying it long before that was the case. So it's the closest island to Australia and New Zealand. So that's the first big advantage. It's got the best navigational aids in the Pacific Island, and that mightn't mean too much from those of you who sail here in Australia and in New Zealand, but once you've started to experience sailing in the Pacific, in areas such as Fiji and even Tonga to an extent, the navigational charm information available, your charts and or lack of navigational aids is alarming. The inaccuracies are alarming, and you need to be very much on your game. As opposed to New Caledonia, in our experience, the charts have been as accurate as they are anywhere else that we've sailed in Australia and in New Zealand. And there's navigational beacons, isolated danger marks, so you've got a much better chance of not running afoul. So it's a big deal to having these good navigational aids. There's modern full service marinas. Having said that, it can be a challenge getting in there. There's more boats per capita in New Caledonia, or Noumea for that matter, than any other city in the world. And the cost of living in New Caledonia is high. Many people choose to buy boats and live on them in the marina as they can't afford the rent, or they don't want to rent property. So whilst there's more boats per capita, a lot of these boats never leave the marinas. So when you're cruising in New Caledonia, it's often the case that you won't see another boat, but when you're in town, it starts to get a bit tough to get a berth. So just don't think you're going to be able to easily just pop in and out of the marina at will. You're going to need to make reservations and things. If you were unfortunate enough to need to haul the boat out over there, again, this is a major plus for New Caledonia. There's modern slipways, there's parts, it's a European country, so you've got all of the conveniences that you would normally have anywhere else, albeit a little bit more expensive because it is an island and everything has to be brought in there. But it is all there if you need it. It's the largest lagoon in the world with lots of excellent anchorages, and this lagoon thing is a big deal. As I said, you're out of the ocean swell, you're not in the ocean fetch, you've got just hundreds and hundreds of little islands to anchor off of, scattered over a couple of hundred nautical miles. It's just stunning. You might have seen in the video we did earlier, a big giant trevally swimming around under the boat. That wasn't lucky, that's the norm. The fish life is extraordinary. The turtles, the birds, the sea life, because it's protected by over 34 marine and terrestrial reserves. It's UNESCO listed, this lagoon. It is an extraordinary place. Springtime all year round, it can get a little bit cooler in the sort of June and July. It's probably like central Queensland temperatures as opposed to southern Queensland or New South Wales temperatures at that same time of the year. So it's quite nice to jump in and have a dip. If you were snorkeling, you probably want to have a thin wetsuit if you're going to spend a fair bit of time in the water snorkeling. The daytime temperatures are mild and pleasant. The nighttime temperatures can be a bit cooler. All in all, it's a very pleasant climate. There's culture there. There's a fascinating blend of cultures with Melanesians, Europeans, Indians, Polynesians, Asians. It's a melting pot to that extent. So there's plenty of culture to immerse yourself in. And as I said earlier, first world, supplies, entertainment and fun, nightlife, every imaginable sort of food and beverage you could have, restaurants, cafes, you name it, it's there, and it's French. They're passionate about their food and their coffee. It's a very nice experience when you're in the city. And then the wilderness areas and the walks. Pretty much the whole of New Caledonia's population is in Noumea. The balance of Grand 3, the main island, is uninhabited. And it's got some stunning walking tracks that are largely all accessible from your boat. The waterfall you're seeing in the photo there is at an anchorage where the boat's anchored about a nautical mile away, and we've just come up in the dinghy. And that's not unique, that is the par for the course. There's a lot of wonderful places to wander around and enjoy if you need to get off the boat, which we all do from time to time. And we talked about traditional gestures. If you're going to be cruising in New Caledonia, you need to undertake la coutume, which is the traditional gesture. So we need to give a piece of cloth, as you can see down in the bottom left right-hand corner of the screen, and a 1,000 francs, which is equivalent to about 14 Australian dollars, as a gesture. To show your respect, it needs to go to the chief of the village that you're visiting, and he will perhaps perform a ceremony as a result of you handing over those gifts. He may not, but it is a gesture. You can give other things if you wish to, as well as this. Some people go in with t-shirts and hats and they don't give the traditional gesture. And the Kanak people are very much about the tradition. So this is what's required. Doesn't mean you can't take them other gifts if you'd like to, but you must do this as a minimum. Okay, must-have cruising guides for New Caledonia and Vanuatu. You cut a little bit on the screen there that made it a bit fuzzy, but you can see you've got a waypoint, you've got an anchorage symbol, you've got pictures. This is directly from the rocket guide that you would see when you open up this particular anchorage. And it's like that for the whole of New Caledonia, the Lower Tili Islands and Vanuatu. It just means that when you've got a short amount of time to experience a larger area, you can be fully informed about where you're going to go and what you're going to see and make decisions about, oh, that doesn't really appeal to me, I'm not going to go there. I'd much rather spend time in a place like that one. Or you could be sailing past something truly magnificent and not know it because you didn't have this information at hand. So don't leave home without them is our advice. You've got the New Caledonia Rocket Guide, you've got the Vanuatu Rocket Guide. Again, on our cruising resources, the website's down the bottom. If you're wondering where to get these, jump onto our website and you'll find out all the information there. When you arrive at our website, you'll go to the services directory and then you'll go down onto the left-hand side here to cruising guides and resources. Then you'll find this page will come up. When you click on that, you'll see New Caledonia and Vanuatu when you scroll down, and there's a great demonstration by the author of the Rocket Guide video embedded there that you can watch it and just see why it is such a valuable thing to have on board. And if you'd like to get a discount on it, you can fill out the form on our website while you're there and you'll qualify for a 10 or even 20% discount on the Rocket Guide, depending on just whether you've joined one of our rallies or whether you've not joined one of our rallies. 10% if you haven't, 20% if you do. So jump on there and have a good look at that. It is just as important as putting fuel in the boat, in my opinion, to have when you're cruising New Caledonia and Vanuatu. So we're lucky enough that the Rocket Guides have given us a free cruising guide and a free travel guide to New Caledonia to give away, which is worth 215 Australian dollars. I think Rachel's in the background.
No, I've got Rachel's been communicating to me in the background here, and I can announce that I think one of the people who are on with us today is Stephen Thompson. His name has come up randomly. So Stephen, congratulations, you've just won a prize.
That's wonderful. Thank you, Rachel and Greg. Stephen Thompson, thank you for attending today, and we'll send you an email with all the information about how to redeem your Rocket Guide. And a big thanks to Richard Cheshire, the author of Rocket Guides, for donating that prize and for the support they've given us over the years. Much appreciated. Alrighty, so we're going to go to Vanuatu now, and I'm going to just show you this little bit of a video to give my voice a rest, and we'll then start to talk about Vanuatu.
just beautiful, John.
You want to go, Greg?
Yeah, I'm in.
Look, it is. It's such a contrast to New Caledonia. It's rainforests and lagoons and blue holes and the most lovely people in the world. So we've got an archipelago made up of 83 islands, which is Vanuatu, from Anatum in the south all the way up to the Torres and the Banks Group in the north. Look, it's totally different from cruising in New Caledonia in that you are, by and large, in open roadstead anchorages, so you don't have the shelter of that coral-fringed reef lagoon, and that means you need to be paying a lot more attention to your weather. You need to choose your anchorage as well and be prepared to move according to the conditions that you're going to be encountering. Having said that, there are plenty of anchorages and it's not a great distance in between the islands, as you'll see. So if we were going to be going with the NC to V rally, which is the rally we run from New Caledonia to Vanuatu, you may well be coming here with the Island Cruising NZ, one of their rallies, and they do a similar route. So we would be leaving from Havana Pass in the south of New Caledonia, and our first stop would be Anethium or Anatum, which is about 200 nautical miles, and it's the most southern of the Vanuatu New Hebrides archipelago. It's not a port of entry, so you cannot just sail into Anatum and arrive, remembering we've left one country and we're going to another. So we've had to get our outward clearance from New Caledonia, we've gone to Vanuatu, and we've got to go through customs and immigration and biosecurity, just like we do when we go to any other country, except it's all done with the boat. So we fly the officials down to Anatum from Port Vila on a light airplane. We put them up for the night and they come and do your full inward clearance, your immigration, your customs, your biosecurity, the whole lot's done. So you're now free to cruise Vanuatu from south to north, which is an important thing, because if you were to sail directly from New Caledonia to Port Vila, for instance, which is the main port of entry, you would then have to sail to windward, remembering we've got southeast winds as our predominant wind. We would have to be sailing to windward from Port Vila back down to visit these islands along the way. And oftentimes people miss them as a result because the weather just doesn't participate. Whereas we're able to choose and wait, be patient and get a nice weather window. Oftentimes we're motor sailing in very calm conditions from Havana Pass, 200 nautical miles. So depending on your boat, a day, day and a half, maybe a little bit longer, to Tanna, and arrive there and now cruise from south to north. So when we arrive at Anatum, we come into an anchorage at Anglewatt. Again, what you're looking at here is a screenshot from the Rocket Cruising Guide to Vanuatu. You can see we've got all anchorage symbols and all sorts of stuff up the top here that each one of these drills down and gives you more and more information about everything you need to know about each of these islands. So when we've arrived in Anatum, that's the 2019 Go East or NC to V Rally fleet anchored there. This is the customs and biosecurity people coming out to visit the boats and check them in and do all the bits and pieces. We're ferrying them around in the dinghies there. And then the guys have come ashore on the beach. So we've spent 2 or 3 days at Anatum. We've done the fire walking ceremony. We've met the village people there. We've had a lovely time, and now we're going to move on to Tanna, which is the next island to the north. And again, there is a port of entry on Tanna at Lanical, which you'll see is on the western side of the island. So north, east, west, south. It's very open to the sea and the wind. The screenshot you can see up in the top right-hand corner here shows chart depths, and it's very deep until you get quite close into the shore. You can see the swell rolling in here. It's basically untenable unless you're very lucky to get there with no wind and no swell. And then you've got to get your dinghy ashore and the rocks to get ashore to go and clear in. It's a mission. The only tenable anchorage on Tanna is at Port Resolution, which is on the other side of the island and in that scalloped bay. It's not a port of entry, and prior permission is required before you arrive there if you haven't cleared in. So don't go to Tanna and come into Port Resolution if you haven't already been processed into Vanuatu, unless you've been given prior permission. And to do that, you need to apply for it in writing. Again, we tell you how to do all this if you're interested. We can't do it all here now. So we've arrived at Tanna. We're in the anchorage, and we've got the locals coming out in their dugout canoes, and this isn't tourism, this is way of life. You'll see in the canoe there's a fishing line all bailed up in the bottom. These guys are out there catching their dinner, feeding their village. They're at work, and they come along and they're very friendly. They say g'day, and it's a lovely experience. We've got a yacht club like no other yacht club you've ever seen, the Port Resolution Yacht Club. You'll see we've got some tables and chairs and flags from pretty much every corner of the globe from visiting vessels. I see there's an ICNZ flag hanging up in the middle there, Nige. Look, there's no beer on tap and there's no flash kitchen, but you will be able to get fed, and you're welcome to BYO. It's a wonderful little place to have visited. We're moving around into the village. I mean, one of the shows that the guys put on was a traditional traditional living show that was put on for the Go East Rally participants when they were there. But these guys are living, you know, very, very simply. That's where they're getting the groundwater out. It's a pretty humble existence, and we like to think of it another world away. It's very close to Australia, but these people live so differently. And look, you don't get to experience this if you're not doing it by yacht. We get to go into these people's villages where they're actually living. It's not tourism driven. So one of the big attractions of this place, Tanna, is this volcano, Mount Yasua. And I know in recent times there's been a tragedy in New Zealand with Mount White there, and you know, this is perhaps considered to be reckless in this day and age, but I would do it again in a heartbeat. The experience I had doing that will stick with me forever. It's all about making memories for me. We climb into the back of this ute and we roll across this dusty road for miles and miles and miles, and we come out and we're pretty much blended in with the locals with the amount of dust and crud we've got all over us. We get to see the volcano appearing there on the horizon. We get to climb up to it. We'll see the OH&S safety railings down the bottom where we arrive, which is nothing more than a few sticks banged into the ground. And we're up there on the rim of this live volcano. If you're going, make sure to take a letter with you. You can post yourself a letter from the bottom of the volcano, and it'll be postmarked Tanna Island and sent back to you at home. Ours got home about 3 months after we did, but it did arrive. So just a little bit of a fun thing to do and have a souvenir there. And then, of course, there's the volcano. And this is a live recording I did when we were there the last time. How you going? You want to go there, Greg?
Yeah, I'm not sure at the moment.
The guide says to us when we arrive, he says, when the volcano him explode, you don't run. You look up, you step aside. Look up for rock, step aside so it doesn't hit you. That's that's a safety briefing for the Mount Yasua volcano. A hell of an experience to have. Yeah, take it or leave it. All right, we've left Tanna now, and we're moving on to the next island, which is Erromango, which is only 50 odd nautical miles to the north of Tanna, so a day sail, and we've arrived at Dillon's Bay. Again, we're met by the kids there in the dugout, and the participants went up into the Skulls Cave to meet the ancestors. And these are the bones, skeleton remains of their ancestors. It's a very sacred site and very privileged to visit this and hear the stories of these people's lives and how much they relish their elders and their ancestors. That's the boats they're anchored in Dillon's Bay. It's a other totally unique experience and a very humbling one. Okay, now we're going to go to the big smoke. So we've arrived at Port Vila in Efate, the main island of Vanuatu. And again, compliments to the rocket guide. You can see there's anchorages for Africa here. The main anchorage is down here in Port Vila, and we've got the GPS route and the lead lines and all the sorts of lovely stuff to show us how to get in here into this harbour. So this is where you will have probably been 10 days or so now by the time we went to Anatum, and then we've gone to Tanna, and then we've gone to Erromango. you'll be looking forward to a cold beer and a hamburger, maybe. I don't know. Well, you can get that and everything else you would like here. Reprovision, all the veggies and from the markets. Everything you would like to be able to get your hands on is here in Port Vila. So we spent a couple of weeks for the first time we arrived in an anchorage just here to the left of the top image on the screen, where you can see the boats on a mooring that we paid for there for, there was pittance. And we were actually able to swim off the back of the boat onto this Iriki Island resort and walk up and use the pool and have cold beers and hamburgers and fish, and it was very, very first world. And then over here we've got the waterfront markets on the foreshore. We've got the veggie markets, fruit and produce there, all right there in the harbour, conveniently located to where the boat is. There's always entertainment on at night time. These guys are full of life and wanting to entertain you. There's lovely waterfalls to go and visit. There's lots to see and do on a Fate off. So to have a few days off the boat exploring, if that was what you'd like to do, there'll be plenty to keep you entertained. Your home base in Vanuatu will be Yachting World Vanuatu. That's not just because they're our rally partners, but they're the only game in town. So we've got the Yachting World Vanuatu Marina, lovely couple there who own this and have owned it for many, many years. They're going to make you at home. It's a med style, what's happened there? It's a med style marina, meaning that you have to drop your anchor out into the channel and back up to the seawall and tie you off onto the seawall if you want to be in a marina berth per se, or you can hire one of their moorings and bring your dinghy into the marina onto the marina dinghy dock there. And this is home to the Waterfront Bar and Grill, which is the local yachty hangout. And you'll see again, there's every flag from every corner of the earth there, and a great vibe in the afternoons to sit down and share war stories and get information from each other about what you've been and seen, where you've been and what you've seen. So a real little social hub is Vanuatu and is Port Vila in Vanuatu. All right, we are running an event there. We were supposed to run it this year for the very first time, called the South Pacific Sailing Nakamal. In Vanuatu, a nakamal is traditionally a gathering place used for ceremonies and the drinking of kava. The South Pacific Sailing Nakamal is going to be that normal and more. So what we're planning here is for the international cruisers to come and meet the Australian and Kiwi cruisers and have 4 days of events here, sharing each other's company and stories. We'll be having all sorts of information sessions about sailing and cruising in New Caledonia and Vanuatu and Australia and New Zealand. It'll just be a party with a lot of relevant information shared at the same time. So hopefully 2021 we'll be able to do that as we had planned to do it this year. You'll see it's sponsored there by Scarborough Marina and the Beach Bar Vanuatu, which is at Mealy Bay in the beach bar, which is the anchorage where we would be anchored right there where you see Come Play in Mealy Bay. And the beach bar off to your right, and the fireworks, the fire show that they put on in the evenings. Scarborough Marina, just for those who don't know, Richard, the manager of Scarborough Marina there, is actually a Nivan himself. He's from Vanuatu. And his support of Vanuatu and the sailing community, international cruising community, has been second to none throughout our relationship, and he's become a major sponsor of this event.
Oh, so that's Scarborough Marina in Redcliffe in Queensland?
Yeah.
Right, okay. Yeah.
All right, so we've hung out in Vila for a while. We're going to go north, and we're going up into northern Vanuatu. Look, I need 5 hours to do this justice again, but where we would be going, we've left down here in Efate, and we've got this chain of islands to go and visit. Typically, we'll go and see Malakula. We're going to go Maui. We've got Pentecost Island just to the bottom of that. Again, which is if you're there early enough in the season, you've got the land diving going on there. Then we've got Santo, which is by far everyone's favourite. This is where the blue hole is. The image you're seeing in the background there is last year's rally participants swimming in the blue hole. They're kayaking up there. There's much better sheltered anchorages in and all around Santo, as you can see. It's a very, very popular cruising ground, and most people wish they had have gone there sooner because their time is running out by the time they've got up here. So don't dawdle to get to Santo. It's very much worth spending
And we're going to come to that shortly, aren't we? About this thing about time frames. It's all around the season and the weather and avoiding the cyclone seasons and insurances and so on. But we are going to come to that, aren't we?
Yes, that's what I hope people are starting to realise is that you know, you just can't do this in 2 months, 3 months. It's you're not going to do it justice. It's a hell of an undertaking and an investment to get the boat ready and yourself ready to just go and do this once. You won't do it justice. So we're going to show you how you can really make the most of it.
Yep.
Just a couple of snippets there from up in the north of Vanuatu. So Vanuatu, items to trade, gifts. We talked about ceremonial requirements when you go ashore and things. There's a suggested list here of gifts. Vanuatu, there's carver plays a very significant role in their culture. But unlike Fiji, they don't have a carver ceremony that they require you to participate in as by way of paying respect. It's more relaxed in that you just do trading, really taking in things that are of value to these people, and remembering that that oftentimes the things that we take for granted are the things they value the most. Staples like rice, flour, long life milk, tinned foods. You know, it's not that they haven't got it; they've got very limited money to buy it with. And of course, if you're able to supply them with a sack of flour and a kilo of rice, well, it's they've got their money to do other things with, or to be able to buy a little more with. They're able to get some more fuel in the generator to be able to charge their phones for a bit longer. It's all just about giving them the opportunity.
It's a whole documentary in itself talking about cow tying ropes.
Yeah, I mean, people say we've got to take some rope, and they'll come out to you and say, "Hey, we need some rope to tie our cow up to stop it wandering away. We want to protect our cow." So, yeah, amazing. Alrighty, if you want to know more about Vanuatu and what you could do to cruise with a purpose whilst you're in Vanuatu and contribute to building and making a difference, our friends at Sailing with Purpose, Rob and Kerry, on a boat called Hapai out of New Zealand, have been NGOs up in Vanuatu for some time. They're cruisers. They're just like us, lovely people. And visit their website, get in touch with them, and you can actually download a suggested gift item list off their website as well. Alrighty, so we've been to Santo. If you look at the top right-hand corner of the screen, we've left Espirito Santo and we're coming home to Bundaberg, if that's our plan. We've done our 5 months. It's now, we've left Southport in May. We've cruised New Caledonia until about August. We've left New Caledonia in August, and now we're back up into Santo, having cruised Vanuatu, and it's the middle to the end of October, and we need to get home before cyclone season starts. So we're going to do the loop. Instead of backtracking back to New Caledonia, we're going to sail back to Bundaberg via Chesterfield Reef. This is an extraordinary experience to go to this reef, but I must say to you, it is a very delicate marine reserve, and you must have prior permission to visit. It's owned and managed by the French New Caledonia, and they are active in policing its waters. Do not even think of going there without having first applied for permission, or there will be consequences. I'm not going to get into what they are because they vary, but don't think they won't know you're there, and don't think they won't follow up if you're there and you're not supposed to be. So if you want to know more about visiting Chesterfield Reef, you can go to our website. The URL's at the bottom of the page there. You can see the distances, why it's so appealing to go there, apart from the fact that it's such a unique place, is we're able to break the voyage up back to Bundaberg. So we've got 550 miles from Santo to Chesterfield, and then we've got 450 miles from Chesterfield to Bundy. So we really get to have that little reprieve in the middle. This is a video that was taken by the guys off Sailing No Regrets, last year's rally participants. Just a quick one of their visit to Chesterfield.
Stop it.
And look, I should just say, it's not somewhere that you're going to go and have a fire on the beach at night. It is a sensitive marine reserve, and you've got to be very respectful and feel very privileged to be there and leave it as you found it. Some of these birds that you're going to see there have had very limited, if any, contact with humans before. They live in a pristine location. So we've got to make sure that we respect it, or none of us will ever be able to go there. All right, so we've arrived back to Bundaberg. If you were an international vessel sailing across the Pacific and you'd never been to Australia before, you might like to join our Go West Rally. The Go East Rally participants are more than welcome to join, but the Go West Rally is more about introducing the international cruisers to Australia and getting them to Australia safely and making sure that they're looked after when they arrive in regard to biosecurity and customs and all the formalities.
So to clarify here, John, what you're saying for the Go East Rally people, they'll sort of, once they leave, if they were with you at Chesterfield, they might then all break off and go back to their respective home ports.
Yeah, look, typically we don't, our rallies aren't a follow me.
Yes.
We get people to the destination, to New Caledonia, and they'll free cruise then for however long they choose to be in New Caledonia. If they'd like to come with us to take advantage of the clearances and things, we'll get them to Vanuatu so that they can cruise again, do the passage in company, benefit from the things we share, and then cruise Vanuatu once they've up the northern part of Vanuatu, cruise that yourself, just solo, or with the company of the other rally boats, and then you'll make the passage back to Australia. Typically, they break up into groups. There'll be 2 or 3 boats that have stuck together throughout the time, and they'll do the passage together. They buddy boat,
Yes.
and they'll find their way home themselves because they already know about coming to Australia. It's not a big deal for them. But again, the party animals join. They like to party. So, look, if you want to know more about the Go West and sailing to Australia, if you're an international cruiser, or you'd like to know a bit more about New Caledonia, Vanuatu and Fiji, we produce a magazine called the Go West magazine. It's 124 pages. The 2020 edition is available to download via our website, and we also have a guide to sailing and cruising in Australia that is free to download. Just jump on, have a look at those, download them, read them at your leisure, and if you've got any questions, you always can email us. So one of the big features of Welcome Week, apart from the fact that we get everyone cleared in and we make sure that their biosecurity goes well and all the rest of it, is we have our Welcome Week event, and this is just a quick wrap up of what happens in Welcome Week. So we've got cruising seminars, we've got entertainments, we've got meals, we've got all sorts of things going on there for a week. It's a great event to attend, especially if it's your first time visiting Australia by yacht. Okay, so what we have here is the Go East Rally Fleet track. To give you some idea, this is the track of all of these vessels and some more from last year's Go East Rally. You can see they've departed Southport. Some chose to sail the Rum Line against the better advice of the rally organiser, who suggested we should have been going south. And those that went south had a quite different trip to those who decided to jump out the gate and go straight to New Caledonia. But we can't sail the boat for you. We can only tell you what we think you should do. We can see that everyone then went on to, some didn't go on to Vanuatu, some came straight back. They only had the 3 months that they could spend. They didn't have 6 months, so they come back to Australia. We had others that all went. Majority went on to Vanuatu, and the majority came back to Bundaberg. But we've got a couple of outliers here. We'll see that 2 boats went up into the Solomons and spent cyclone season in the Solomon Islands. We've got another 2 boats that went down to New Zealand and spent summer in New Zealand. And then we've got this one here, which is Songlines, who went on to Fiji.
And can we just hold on there, John? This is really important. So just about every marine insurer now won't insure your vessel if you stay in those areas through the cyclone season. Would that be a fair comment?
That's, yeah, pretty much 100% accurate.
So what you're saying is the window of being in this area is, let's say, May to October. And then if you do decide that you want to stay out there in the Pacific for more than that period of time, you've either got to jump up into that equatorial region away from the cyclone belt or go back home or down south, yeah?
Exactly right. And again, as we've seen, you know, just 5 months, you're really not going to be able to do this. Going to Fiji, we go to Fiji because we've got commitments there with the Go West Rally to, you know, encourage the international boats to come back to Australia. And we've done New Caledonia and Vanuatu several times, but to try and do New Caledonia, Vanuatu and Fiji in one season, forget it. I mean, all you're going to be doing is sailing. You're not going to experience too much at all. So what are the options? I mean, we've got to find out whether we're going to rally or we're not going to rally. Look, we have people say to us all the time, we're not rally people. That's fine. I don't actually know what a rally person is, but you're not one of them. That's okay. They say things like, we don't need our hand held and we don't want to be told what to do. So you can do as much or as little as you wish to in regard to our rallies. The things about our rallies and those of ICNZ are this. You're getting advantages, VIP clearances in exclusive locations. When you arrive in New Caledonia, I'm running over time a bit, so I won't run this video, but when you arrive in New Caledonia, you're arriving at Ilotmet, outside of the resort, picked up a mooring ball, swimming off the back of the boat and enjoying the resort facilities from the moment you arrive, whilst we take care of your biosecurity, your immigration, your customs, the whole lot's all being processed. That's my dinghy with me, bringing the agent and the biosecurity aboard one of the vessels. There's the police doing the customs and the immigration on board the back of Songlines. So we take care of the whole deal. You just get to enjoy it. We've got a lot of informative and social events, so we're sharing information to make sure you get the most of your time cruising. We've got the guys from Marine Parks New Caledonia there. We've got parties, we've got yoga, we've got all sorts of stuff. We're catering for the kids as well with activities on the beach. It's a very fun and informative environment. You're getting tons of information from us. These are just the guides that we will send to you that we 1 through 12 there, including all the documentation you require to depart Australia and arrive in New Caledonia, guides to preparing your vessel, departing, you know, it's comprehensive what we provide. We've got rally partners, 40 of them currently, that are offering deals and discounts on all sorts of things, from chandlery items right through to dry storage marinas such as the Boatworks, you know, electronics, water makers, you name it. We've got pretty much it covered, and you'll be able to get a rally good deal from one of our rally partners. If you'd like to see a whole Go East Rally experience from arriving at Southport, going through the whole period process and then leaving and sailing to New Caledonia, watch that video on our YouTube channel, and you'll see exactly what goes on, the briefings, the whole shebang, and the voyage. So Fiji is calling, and so many people say to us, we want to go to Fiji, we want to go to Fiji from Australia. It's not just that straightforward. So let's just talk about Fiji quickly. This is an extraordinary cruising ground. We'll see here that we've got Viti Levu, which is the main island. We've got Vanuatu up in the top, which is the smaller island. And we've got all of these area in between. That's all cruising. Kandavu down in the south. So up here in the north, we've got Savu Savu, which oftentimes is where the boats that are coming from the west, I beg your pardon, boats that are coming from the east will clear in. Up in the top of this port here, that's the clearance port at Savu, here at Savu Savu. So they'll come across from Tonga and clear in up here. and then they're able to begin their cruising.
John, sorry to
Go ahead,
interrupt.
Greg.
I'm just going to do a bit of a production interruption. So we've had lots of participants joining us on today's presentation, but we did say an hour and a half, which we have now reached. So I just wanted to let everyone know who is here today watching this, that you, if you're running out of time or if you've got other things to do, don't stress, because in the next week or two, Rachel will put this presentation up onto our YouTube channel. So what we're going to do is we're going to continue it and let John go through this, because I know there's still a lot of information to share. So we're not going to make John rush to a close here. We're just going to keep going. And so if you do need to go elsewhere, don't worry. In the next week or two, you'll be able to go onto our YouTube channel and pick up where you've left off and watch the rest of the presentation. Is that okay, John?
That's perfect, Greg. Thank you. And I apologise to those that haven't got the time to stay on, but please do sign back in and have a look at the balance. I wanted to give you a really good insight here. I hope that you're enjoying it. And yeah, look, feel free. We won't think you're rude if you leave us. Stick around if you're still interested.
Good on you.
All righty. So if we're coming from the east, we would have cleared in at Cebu up in the north. If we would then probably cruise the Asawa group down here in the west, and we'd come down into the Mamanuca Islands. Optionally, we could come, if we've cleared into Savu and come down through the Lao group and the southern Lao group down through here, and then come back into Kandavu and Suva, and then down Kandavu, and then come back around the bottom. So we might have done that route. But the problem with doing that route, as you might see, you must clear in here at Savu. You cannot stop at any of these islands along the way until you have been cleared into the country. So you've missed all of this. You cannot stop here and enjoy all of this marvelous cruising ground, which is the Lao group, north and south, but until you've cleared in. Of course, east, southeast winds, we can't get back there easily. It's a challenge. It's not that you can't, but when you're on a limited time frame and sitting here waiting for weather, you might be waiting 2 weeks before you can get back, and you might only have 6 weeks to spend in Fiji. So you don't want to waste all your time waiting for a weather window that might not materialize. So what do? You typically move on and miss it. So it's how do we get to see all of this? If you'd like to know more about Fiji and cruising there and customs and all sorts of things, the local customs as well as the formalities, the Fiji Shores and Marinas Guide's free, and again, you can get it off our website. I would suggest to you that you're going to have at least 3 to 4 months to do Fiji justice, and there's a way of doing that that is very practical. So if you're intent on sailing from Queensland, Australia, intent on sailing from Australia to Fiji, your route's going to have to look something like this. If you're leaving from the Gold Coast, we're going to put our big south loop in here so we get our easting in that we talked about earlier. And then we're going to go across to Fiji. Well, guess what? Last year, this is my track from our boat, we pretty much did a run line. We started out putting our east in, but then when I downloaded our next lot of weather 2 days out, we were blessed with an absolute perfect window to just hot foot it and get straight there. It's the first time in 5 years we've been able to do that. Our typical route looks more like that. We have to keep going, because when this southeast comes in, it comes in with a vengeance, because this is the first real big landmass here for quite some way, and these reinforced trade winds hit Fiji and extend out here for a couple of 100 miles, typically 100 to 200 odd miles. And the last day or day and a half of that voyage, if you haven't got the angle, man, it's crucial. It really gets challenging. It's not dangerous, it's just uncomfortable. So again, we've got to put in that easting so that we can manage that wind when we get it onto a point of the boat that's manageable. So how do we go about doing that? If we're going to be arriving in Fiji, by the way, our chosen port of entry is Port Denarau Marina, which is in the western side of Fiji near Nandi. We arrived from New Caledonia and we sailed in here. This is first world after you know, 5 or 6 days at sea, it's lovely to be able to get in here and have a cold beer and a hot cup of coffee and a meal in a restaurant and have a proper floating marina. This is the really only proper floating marina you're going to have in Fiji. Majoritively, you're looking at mooring balls. Muscat Cove has got a floating marina, but not to this extent. To be clear in at this port, you tie the boat up, you forget it, and you're able to recover and relax from the voyage. All the officials are here. It's on tap. It's laid on. I'll give you just a quick play of what this place looks like. So if we're going to be arriving in Fiji at Port Denarau, you need to know all of the advanced notification of arrival requirements. I'll start again. You need to know all of the advanced notification of arrival requirements for Fiji, including your customs and your biosecurity, and it's quite involved. You have to fill out a form. You've got to provide photos of your passport. You've got to provide photos of your vessel. It's not something you're going to be able to do on the way. You're going to need to do this before you leave your last port. To get right across all the procedures for arriving in Fiji, go to Denarau Marina, where you can see the URL on the bottom of the screen, and you'll get fully informed there of what it is you need to do to arrive in Fiji. Alrighty, Fiji has the sevu, which is a traditional ceremony. So again, when we're visiting the islands, we need to go ashore, introduce ourselves, pay respect. We buy our kava from the local supermarket. Sorry, not the local markets. We'll buy it by the kilo, and we'll take it and we'll hand it over and perform sevu with the traditional people, the village, the chief of the village, and then we'll be given permission to explore and inhabit their background, their backyard. These again are a lovely people, and if you do the right thing, you'll be just so welcome. Okay, what's so special about this Lao group of islands? I don't think there's a lot to rival this Lao group, and let me show you why. And by the way, this video is compliments of Tradewinds, who are a charter catamaran fleet, and they run a vessel in Fiji. If you can't get your own boat over there and you'd like to go and experience it, look up Tradewinds. There's no bareboat charters in Fiji, by the way. You'll have to be a crewed charter because of the inaccuracy of the charts, making it just far too dangerous to let people charter these boats without locals. So yeah, have a look at this place. So that's the Lao group, guys. And look, like all of these places that are so special, they're often hard to get to. And again, as we talked about, this is well to the east of the main islands of Fiji. And we've got those east-southeast trade winds. So when we're trying to come from our side of the world, it's a challenge to get there. So how do we get to go and see these places? The other thing, we're going to come to how we get to go there, but the other thing you must put on your bucket list, and I don't care whether you take the boat or you fly over and stay at the resort, get one of these Fiji regatta weeks under your belt. We've done 8 in a row now, I think. And yeah, this year would have been 9. This is just the most extraordinary fun thing to do. Have a look at this.
As a cruising yachtsman, when you sail into Muscat Cove, it got something, and it's certainly a special place.
It's fantastic to always have so many yachties come from all over the world and celebrate by having a fantastic regatta.
This is the 36th regatta, so it's been going for a while, and some fun memories, and maybe some not so fun memories. But it's the main thing is everybody has fun. Everybody just have fun.
Yeah, we're happy to see everybody back again here in Fiji next year. We're looking forward to it, and yeah, bring it back on, fuller.
Oh, I feel like I've been all around the South Pacific in the last hour and a half. Keep going.
So, yeah, every year, 30, I think 40 odd years, the regatta's been running now. It's you know, there's sail racing. It's all a lot of fun. There's some serious bits of it, but the Hobie Cats are there and everyone gets to enroll and race a Hobie Cat. It's parties, drinking, and lifelong friendships will be made at that event, I am sure. So how do we get to do all this stuff? Fiji in particular. So this is Margie and Russ of SV Sunrise, who did our Go East rally last year. They left from Southport, went to New Caledonia, went to Vanuatu, sailed back. You can see they went with the wind through Vanuatu, and then they came back down straight from Vila to the southern tip of New Caledonia, back up to Noumea, and then left from the Isle of Pines here in the south, which they got permission to do, after clearing out of Noumea, and made their way to NZ, where they spent summer.
Now, before you go ahead, just so you know, Nigel's had to pop off. He had something that's come up. So can you carry on and talk through Nigel's part of this without Nigel, please?
Absolutely, it's no challenge. So this is the voyage that we basically did back in 2009 ourselves. So we've decided we're going to not come back to Australia. We want to get out here into see more of the Pacific next year. We've already done New Caledonia. We've already done Vanuatu. If we go back out next year, we get to spend all our time in Tonga and Fiji, and then we can just leave Fiji in October maybe and make a beeline for New Caledonia and then a beeline back for Bundaberg or wherever we're going to come back to. So we come down here. If you're a bit intimidated by sailing in this piece of water, which it can be intimidating if you don't know how to do it and when to do it and what to look for, then the Island Cruising of New Zealand, Island Cruising NZ, are your go-to guys to get you safely to New Zealand and then get you safely back out to the islands, including Tonga and Fiji. We've coupled up with these guys to run the Go South Rally. So we are going to, in association with ICNZ, run a rally from New Caledonia to New Zealand so that you guys can safely get down there, and you can leave the boat in NZ and fly home. I mean, this is all assuming COVID's no longer a thing, of course, and fly home. You can leave the boat safely and comfortably in New Zealand, or you can spend time cruising and visiting New Zealand like we did. We did 8 weeks of cruising down there, and then we put the boat away and we did the South Island for 4 weeks, rented a car and drove around. It's all there. It's all very interesting and very pleasant. So maybe season 2, you might look at going down to New Zealand so that in season 2, you can go out and do Tonga and Fiji. This is about the Go South Rally. If you'd like to know more about that and how it will all work, just jump onto our website, and that's the link. This is our trip down there in 2009. We were wing on wing for a lot of the way on the mono. This is the Bay of Islands, gathering mussels on the rocks there in the Bay of Islands, and then sharing these mussels, and other boats went out and got scallops. The seafood in this Bay of Islands is plentiful. So we were sharing those on the beach. We chose to spend Christmas in Opua at the Opua Cruising Club, and we were with all the international cruisers there and some of the locals, and had a really lovely Christmas there. We then went down to Auckland and stayed in the Viaduct Marina, which is in the centre of Auckland, and were there for New Year's Eve with the fireworks off the Sky Needle there. Just a wonderful experience, be able to be right in the centre of the city there in a marina. Out to the Great Barrier Island, where we cruised for several weeks, visiting and hiking, fishing. Again, wonderful out there. The snapper that hang around the mussel farms, you can pretty much take your lure away and say, no, I don't want you, I want you, and choose which one you catch. They're just there looking at you. Awesome hikes. I think it's the DOC, they call it in New Zealand, not the Department of Corrections, but I'm just not sure what they call it. But the walking trails that they've got all over this country, especially in this area, are wonderful. You can spend many hours just wandering through and sightseeing. That's us up on the top of the Mount Hobson in Great Barrier Island, which was some sort of a mission to get up there. All right, so Island Cruising New Zealand. This is where we would have introduced Nigel and Amanda, who you can see up in the top right-hand side there. Like everyone, COVID's had an impact on Nigel and Amanda's business. With international borders being closed, there are no yacht rallies run, there is no business. So Nigel's actually having to work. He's back working for an employer and earning money. He's trying to see their way through so that they can run these rallies again in the future. So if we're going to go to New Caledonia to Opua, New Zealand, we're going to go with the Go South Rally in conjunction with Island Cruising. We're going to get in the Noumea before we depart, weather discussions, meteorological advice, passage planning, departure procedures, and arrival procedures. You'll be fully informed about making the voyage and arriving in New Zealand. You'll have special permission to depart from the Isle of Pines, which is 60 odd nautical miles south of Noumea, where typically once you've cleared out of Noumea, you must make your exit from the country. So that allows you to stage there in a lovely location, waiting for the right weather window. Again, ICNZ don't sail to a schedule, they sail to the weather. So they will wait there until they see the passage come, the weather for the passage that they want to sail, and they will be sailing it in company with you. So they're not just going to be sending you off and say, off you guys go, we'll see you when you get here. They're going to be just as interested in what sort of passage you're going to have as you are. This is a typical passage that they've taken a couple of pictures from here, even stopped to have a swim. They get it right, and they know how to get it right. And arriving in the quarantine dock down in Opua. But this is the Bay of Islands Marina in Port Opua, to give you some idea of where you're going to arrive at and what you can expect.
Port Opua in the beautiful Bay of Islands is New Zealand's main port of entry, with over 70% of all international cruising yacht clearances. The Bay of Islands is the most northerly point of entry and is perfectly orientated to capture arriving yachts from the Northern Pacific. Port Opua is reputed to be the easiest facility to clear day or night, It's unencumbered by commercial ship operations and easily navigated. The Bay of Islands is a primarily recreational area, popular with New Zealand and international yachties because of its stunning natural beauty, with 144 islands and bays. Also steeped in history, you'll pass Waitangi, where the country's founding constitutional document was signed between Europeans and Maori. The historic seaside village of Russell on your left, which was New Zealand's first European settlement, and the bustling tourist town of Paihia on your right, filled with cafes, bars and tourism activities. All this as you enter the clearly marked Veronica Channel, which leads you to the quarantine facility in Opua. Announcing your arrival on Maritime Radio, or VHF, you make passage directly to the awaiting quarantine dock.
Okay, if you're going to do this with the Go South Rally and the ICNZ, you'll have a welcome week in Opua, not dissimilar to that which we have in Bundaberg. This is the Princess of the Pacific Party. Not sure that fella there on the with the hair, which AKA is Nigel, is much of a princess, but anyway. They've got a cruising company through the islands down in to discover and get you orientated with the Bay of Islands and show you where the mussels are and the scallops and all the rest of the good stuff. Traditional greetings, traditional potlucks with cruisers on the beach. You'll just be well looked after and you'll be part of a community. So we've spent summer in New Zealand. Now we want to get back out to Tonga and Fiji. If you want to, again, you can do this with ICNZ as part of their Pacific Circuit Rally.
And just asking there, the stop at Norfolk.
I'll come back to that.
Okay, right. Yep.
Thank you, but I have got it there. Yeah. So we've got the Pacific Circuit Rally. We're going to leave out of Opua. You can see the AIS image of all the boats flocking out of Opua when they've called the weather window to go. And we're going to arrive in Tonga and we're going to go on to Fiji. You can do one or all of the legs of this rally. You don't have to sign up for all 5 legs. You can just go from Opua to Tonga and get the benefit of all the weather assistance and all the parties and fun and everything else, and then make your own way back east or back west, sorry, or you can stay on and go to Fiji with them, which will give you the benefit of sorry, I'm just getting ahead of myself there. We'll just keep going. You can choose how many of these legs that you join and which countries you participate as part of the rally. All those who register will be part of the pre-departure week, which will be activities, parties, getting to know each other, weather discussions and passage planning, assistance with departure and everything else. When we do this Pacific Circuit Rally, you're going to see that we leave New Zealand and we go to Tonga via Minerva Reef, which, weather permitting, there'll be a stopover here in Minerva Reef, which is not dissimilar to Chesterfield. I'll show you a quick little video of that in a moment. But we've managed to break up the voyage a little by having a stopover in Minerva. We'll then go and cruise through Tonga in company or on your own from south to north until we get up to Vavau. We'll leave Vavau and then we go to Fiji. And if you do choose to go to Fiji with the rally, you'll get the opportunity to clear in the Lao group. This is where you will arrive in Fiji and be cleared in to cruise. This is a huge deal. Sorry, this is where you'll arrive and be cleared in the cruise. This is a huge deal because what you're now able to do, remember, it's very hard to get back from here. What we're now able to do is cruise the Lao group from north to south after we've cleared into the country, and then we're able to cruise with the trade winds around to the western side of Fiji and experience Muscat Cove Regatta Week, the Asawa group of islands, Port Denarau Marina, all of these wonderful things that we've shown you earlier. We've still missed all this stuff. And look, we've missed Savu Savu and the north altogether. You can't do it all in one season, but this is going to get you to see the absolute good stuff. And because you're probably going to be here longer, you may well get back up around here. Remember, you don't really need to leave here until October. You can spend, 2 to 3 months between Tonga and Fiji, or just go quickly through Tonga and spend your 3 or 4 months in Fiji. And then,
because you've already done Newcastle and Vanuatu the year before.
Yeah, and then don't join these legs if you don't want to do New Caledonia and Vanuatu again. Just hightail at home, or
Solomon's.
the other option, which we'll talk about. So we're going to go to the Lao group. If you want to continue on, they're going to clear in at Anitum like we talked about. Then you're going to get to go into the Loyalty Islands, and before you go there. But when you choose to do the Go South rally, you actually get to leave from Isle of Pines like we talked about, and ICNZ arranges special permission for you to stop at Norfolk if you choose to, and if they dictate that it's prudent to with the weather. Norfolk's islands are owned by Australia, of course, and normally you would have to do a full inward clearance there and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. ICNZ have arranged for special permission for boats to be able to seek refuge there and to go ashore for a limited period of time if you're part of the Go South rally with ICNZ. So you get to break that voyage up. So there's a lot of benefits in choosing to make these voyages with Rallies. So if we're going to go from New Zealand to Tonga, run line's about 1,100 nautical miles. We're going to go via Minerva Reef, like I said, and this is what Minerva Reef looks like.
Again, for those people who are still with us, thank you, and it's fantastic. But what we're going to do is I'm not going to rush John. We're up to 2 hours, but we're going to just let John continue on with this presentation. We'll have a great resource for future reference. So that's fine, John. Keep going, mate.
Thank you, Greg. And we are not far away now, by the way. So, yeah, look.
Someone just said, take all night. It's excellent.
ICNZ said that, look, they may choose not to stop here if the weather window is such that they feel it prudent to continue, then they'll continue. But this is a great opportunity to have a breather, to enjoy something very special, and you know, it's all just part of this passage planning and passage management that we talked about earlier. Having options. So we've arrived at Tonga with the ICNZ, and we've got our official clearance, inward clearance you saw there. We've got Big Mama's Tropical Yacht Club and the Customs Office, where there's often a party or two and a drink or three. And of course, you're in the islands now, and we can't just normally pull up to a fuel dock and plug the petrol bowser in. We have to generally lug our jerry cans in our dinghy up to the service station and lug them back, and it takes quite some time. But again, with the ICNZ, they've arranged special bunkering so that the fuel truck will come down and bring you alongside a wharf, and you'll be able to refuel your vessels there straight from there. So it makes it a lot more convenient, takes some of the hassle out of cruising. And that's all part of what you get when you join these rallies. So we're cruising in Tonga. We're going to go Tonga as a group, and so we're going to go from the south to the north via Nuku'alofa, Hapai, and Vavau. These are our photos from when we visited. The top image up there, we're in the Vavau, in the harbour there, anchored. We've got the Hapai group. Then we've got the Swallows Cave, where we've taken the dinghy into that cave there and then dove and Mariners Cave's the next one round, and we actually dive down and swim under and come out in the lagoon inside the cave. You can see the picture of the diver there. An pretty extraordinary experience, a bit intimidating to do the first time, but it's free diving, it's not scuba, and what a feeling when you've done it. Of course, we're getting together with the local guys and sharing meals and sharing stories and getting to know their values and their customs. And we have some parties as always. And then of course, when it comes time to leave, all the clearance arrangements are done. Everyone comes to you, makes life very easy instead of you having to traipse all around town and work it all out. So that was Tonga. We've arrived in Fiji, and as I said, we're going to arrive in the Lao group and experience cruising the Lao, you know, as easily as it possibly can be done. I mean, these are just some random images of cruising in Fiji.
Summer sunset, summer island. Sunset slowly.
Best sunsets in the Pacific, I can say without doubt, in Fiji. All right. If we don't want to go to New Zealand and we don't want to go to Fiji, but we don't want to come home either, and this is what Paul and Leah have done on the vessel Escape last year. They've chosen to go to the Solomon Islands. So they've done the Go East, and you can see Paul and Leah did exactly as they were supposed to do and went all the way south and then put the easting in. They had a slower trip, but they had a very good trip and they didn't break anything, which is most important. They then cruised New Caledonia. They went on to Vanuatu. Then they went on to the Solomons, and they spent summer in the Solomon Islands cruising there. They've got a wonderful YouTube channel where they've got series 1 through 52 or more, I think, of their videos and go into great detail of cruising the Solomon Islands. It's YouTube on their channel, Sailing Catamaran Escape. So jump on there and get into that if you're at all interested in cruising the Solomons. We, at this stage, don't have any organised rally to the Solomons, but that's something that we're in discussions with at the moment, and we hope that we may be able to offer that in the near future. Paul and Leah weren't the only ones that chose. By the way, what you're looking at here is Predict Wind's tracking map. So as part of the Predict Wind subscription with an Iridium Go satellite connection, you get this tracking map, and this is the track of their voyage exactly as they made it, and their blog posts as they were making their voyage. So you can see here they returned to Townsville, and it's closing in on Townsville. The winds are a bit stronger today, skies overcast, July 21. And so they've, you know, put these blog posts in all the way. You can have a look at this, their Predict Wind tracker. The next one is the same. It's the guys from Brave. Now, these guys are Kiwis, and they actually sailed from New Zealand to Southport, well, to the Gold Coast, and to Australia, and then came up and joined us at Southport for the Go East Rally. They've heard about it, and they're a family, and they very much wanted to do this trip in company. So they decided to sail from NZ and come to us before they went east. And that was just a wonderful experience they had and we had with them. 3 or 4 families that year. They all had a lot of fun. So they did New Caledonia, of course, they did Vanuatu, they went up to the Solomons, and then they came from the Solomons back down to return home to New Zealand, which wasn't their plan. That was a COVID forced situation.
So that was, they did all of that over 2 years, correct?
This was departing May 2019 and returning back to NZ in October 2020.
Yeah.
So 18 months. 2 seasons.
Yep.
So if you're interested more, YouTube Brave Sailing, they've got it all on there as well, and it's very much worth going and have a look at. We actually, David of Brave, put together a cruising guide, and we did some work with him to put it into a format that we could share it with everyone. And so this is free and downloadable on our website. Again, at Cruising Guides and Resources, you'll see it's about them. It's about the anchorages. This is all there for you to download free. So we'll talk quickly about some distances, and we're very, very close to being done here, guys. I just wanted to give you a little recap because we've just done a lot of miles and we've been a lot of places. So if we were to leave Southport, Australia for Noumea, New Caledonia, and we sailed the run line, we'd be doing 780 nautical miles. We can see that voyage here. If we were then to go to Port Vila via Anethium, we would do So from Newcastle to Vanuatu via Anethium through to Port Vila, we would have done 380 nautical miles, an additional 380. If we decided we were going to go to the Solomons instead of coming back to Australia, we'd be 550 nautical miles up to the Solomons, to Honiara, where we would clear in. If we decided we wanted to come back to Australia from Vanuatu, well, we'd go Luganville to Bundaberg via the Chesterfield Reef, which is 1,000 odd nautical miles. If we decided to go from New Caledonia to Fiji via the route shown entering in the west, 720 nautical miles. If we were going to go to Opua, we'd be 830 nautical miles from New Caledonia. And if we were going to go with the ICNZ back out, we'd be 1,100 miles out to Tonga. And then if we went on to Fiji, from Tonga, we'd be 400 nautical miles on over to into the Laos. So that just will give you a reference when you're starting to think about this as to passage distances. If you want to know more about any of our rallies, they're all here on our website. Just go to the homepage and click on any one of them. Go East, NC2V, Mystery Island, they're all here. And you can lodge expression of interest in any one of them. There's an enormous amount of information built within each of those rally pages. If you're looking for products and services for your boats and you want to deal with trusted professionals that we personally have had dealings with, we are a boat owner and we have been for many, many years. So we use these people ourselves. Go to the services directory page of our website. When you hit the homepage, services directory, down on the left-hand side, you'll see agents and insurance, everything through here, Marinas and Yacht Club, safety and sea survival, first aid, medical supplies, weather forecasts, water makers, blah, 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 blah. It's all there for you to use as a resource. If you're a social media person, we run a number of Facebook pages. They're all there. Please like them, follow them. If you like Facebook groups, I am the administrator and creator of a number of Facebook groups, which again, all appear here, Sailing and Cruising in Fiji. Please join the groups and contribute and see what others are contributing. That Sailing in Fiji in particular is an extraordinary group where people are very active with about 2,000 members and sharing their experiences. Our YouTube channel, I've created playlists here of our own videos, but also easy references to, for instance, Sailing Escape, Sailing the Solomon Islands, their whole series there. Sailing with No Regrets, their voyaging around Chesterfield Reef and Australia. If people are watching from overseas and want to see what it's like cruising the east coast of Australia, jump into Sailing Australia with No Regrets. They've just been cruising the Queensland coast for the past 6 months and put some wonderful videos up on there. There's online training videos. It's all there on our playlists. More info than you could probably hope to poke a stick at. So guys, that's it. Just a quick mention to our premium rally partners, without whom I couldn't sit here and do this. These guys support us, especially in times when we aren't running rallies and we aren't getting rally entry fees. We would be destitute without them and their continued support. So thank you so much.
Over the last 2 hours, we've had a number of questions flowing through. So I'll just go back to the beginning. So obviously the first one was, are there any scheduled regattas in Fiji or New Caledonia? And in terms of regattas, I think you covered that, didn't you? You mentioned the one, the Muscat Cove regatta.
Yeah, look, that's probably the only, apart from the ICNZ rallies and Muscat Cove Regatta Week, that's about the only organised events that there are in Fiji. There is a biannual race, I think, to around New Caledonia. I just can't remember, the name escapes me.
Yes.
But there is a yacht race around circumnavigating New Caledonia biannually, which is a lot of fun. That pretty much sums it up, though, I think.
Yeah. And then there was, when we were talking about registrations, there was a question from Ian, just confirming that there was AMSA who one is registered with. So with that, I actually responded to Ian and said yes, and sent Ian the link to the AMSA website, ship registration, registering the vessels for the Australian General Shipping Register.
That's it.
So if anyone does want that link, I'm sure they can contact you, John, or contact us.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
David asked a good question. He just asked, what if the boat is registered in the UK? And I was about to start typing a long answer. But I did just say it's also all okay. But my understanding is that if the boat is registered from any different country, how about I let you answer, John?
Yeah, look, there's a couple of complications there. What was the gentleman's name, sorry?
David.
So
Yeah.
David, if you're still there, assuming you're an Australian and you've purchased the boat, so a couple of things have happened. If you're an Australian and you purchased the boat overseas, you would have sailed it back to Australia, and then on returning to Australia, you would have had to import it, because you can't bring a foreign flagged vessel into Australia as an Australian owner, resident / citizen, without importing the vessel. That's a short story, but that is the case if you research it. So I'm assuming that you may well be an international visiting yacht, and therefore you're on a foreign visa, and you're here in Australia on your boat, and therefore you're on a control permit, which is allowing you to cruise Australia without importing the boat, which means that you wouldn't, as a foreign flag vessel, you wouldn't have to have Australian registration in order to leave the country.
And then in terms of that if you've been sailed in as a visiting yacht from the UK with a UK flag, you can then go in as a visiting yacht to all the other countries you've talked about.
Absolutely right.
Yeah. Okay. So we had this question in our last presentation, I think, is the rally open to solo sailors? Dave asked this, another David, and I've actually already answered him and said, I'm pretty certain that's not the case.
Look, it is. The best thing I can do is anyone that's wanting to know more about the terms and conditions of the rally entry, we get a lot of questions like, what qualifications do you need to have? What equipment does a boat need to have, et cetera, et cetera. We've got a rally terms and conditions of entry list that if you were to send me an email, I'd be more than happy to share that with you. But yes, we have had solo sailors join us before. It's not up to us to determine whether you're capable or competent to make this voyage. It's up to us to share with you the information that we do and that you make an informed decision.
Well, there you go. And apologies, Dave, if I gave you the wrong answer earlier. So that's good. Andrew asked, are there often any problems with insuring older 40-plus vessels, and similarly for leaving them during the cyclone season? So I think we covered a lot of that, Andrew, through the presentation. So much of what John has covered today is about how to manage around the cyclone seasons.
And look, in regard to the insurance, yes, I mean, it gets challenging to get insurance for vessels as they age, but typically a survey is all that will be required in order to satisfy the insurer's risk. Yeah,
very good. And then Harm and I had a bit of an exchange. You were mentioning the personal locator beacons, and he thought you'd said IRS, but it was the AIS, which is you now get the personal beacons that are actually also AIS triggered as well, yes?
Yeah, so we've got two choices there. We've got a personal EPIRB or we've got a personal AIS.
Yes.
Do we have one or do we have both? Do we have neither? And what's the advantages of one versus the other? And look, we cover all that in detail in the offshore cruising prep course and share our thoughts on, what choice is the right one.
Okay. Now, Steve, who was our happy prize winner today, he's asked a couple of questions, but and he did ask a bit of a how long is a piece of string question at the start there. What's the best estimate of power to use at sea on a 53 mono? Look, we could get into the details of that now, Steve. I'll let John answer, but it's also one where you might just want to contact someone like John privately and have a chat.
Yeah, look, I probably don't fully understand the question in regard to what's the best power to use.
Oh, no, sorry. This was when you were talking about solar, wind, and just talking about how much power.
Okay. I understand. Yep. And look, and it's all relevant to your consumption. It's impossible to say that without what we, again, in the offshore cruising prep course, we teach you how to do a vessel assessment in regard to power consumption and demand. And then once you know how much power you're going to consume, you'll know how much you need to replace. And then we can look at what's the most effective method of replacing that power. And that may be a combination of wind and solar. It may be a mechanical generator, it may be a Watson C hydro generator. You know, there's many options. It's just based on no two vessels and no two persons' demands are the same.
Yeah. Your Cat 1 HF radio?
So Cat 1 isn't a requirement to go offshore in Australia as part, unless you're in an organised event with a yacht club or racing or so forth. So no, as far as the Down Under Rallies confirmed, HF single sideband radio is not a requirement. It's certainly a great tool if you've got it, and we would encourage it, but it's not a mandatory requirement.
Okay. What is the typical time spread when this is a good question from Dave. What's the typical time spread from the first to the last arrival in Newcastle when you all first head off once you've opened up the weather window?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. And I can only give past examples of rallies we've run. Typically, we've got some boats that arrive in 4.5 odd days, the faster catamarans, and the slowest boats that are the avid sailors that aren't going to motor at all, that are sailing the whole voyage. You know, they've taken as many as 7. We haven't had anyone longer than 7, including the slowest voyage was on a Warram catamaran that was outboards, and they weren't going to motor it if they didn't have to. They sailed it the whole way. They were doing 3 or 4 knots at some time, and they were just over 7 days.
Okay, very good. A good question from Glenn. When you were talking about the lagoon at New Caledonia and everything, what depth of keel is manageable sailing around Newcastle? He said that he has a mono with a 2.1 metre deep keel. Do you have much depth issue there?
None at all. The only limitations you'll have is how close to the islands and atolls you can get when you anchor. But yes. Transiting from one location to the next through the lagoon, you know, especially if you're using the rocket guide to guide you with your waypoints and routes, then you'll have no trouble whatsoever. And I mean whatsoever. It's very, very simple to do.
Good. Now, Dave asked a question again, which is linked to the one you said before about the terms and conditions. He said, is crew and vessel preparation totally the skipper's responsibility? ? Do rally organisers do vessel inspections, crew qualification checks, etc.?
In our instance, it is 100% the captain's responsibility. We provide suggestions, we provide access to information, we provide recommended courses, but at the end of the day, we're not here to tell people what they can and cannot do. If they meet our terms and conditions and rally entry terms and conditions of entry, they're in. If they pay the rally registration fee and they meet those terms and conditions, they're in. And part of those terms and conditions are saying that they are competent to make the voyage and that they have undertaken what they feel to be the necessary, experience to make the voyage. And look, I've made a conscious decision to do that because I've met people as we've been sailing around oceans that, and I was one of them, who have very, very little experience, and it was gained on the job. And if I wasn't able to have done that, I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you now.
Yep. Now, Stephen asked another question. I'm not 100% sure of it. I have another question too. Blue water insurance, does that replace the need for your normal insurance, i.e. while here in Australia? I think I know the answer, but I'll let you have a shot first.
So typically what we do is we have our cover for our home waters, which is our Australian insurance, and then we put on a blue water extension. So for instance, this year we haven't had to pay our blue water insurance because we didn't leave the country. We tell our insurer that it is our intention to go offshore, and we would like to have a policy that will allow us to do so, and they tell us what we can expect to pay for that should we go offshore and whether they will insure us. But we then let them know that we will let them know if we're going to go, because there are things that are going to impede our ability to do so, such as COVID or family problems. We get a lot of time where people have, you know, right up until a week before they're ready to go, but then a family member falls ill and they can't go, so they're able to cancel the blue water component of their policy and get a refund for that.
And I think at the end of the day, excuse the pun, it's fluid pricing.
Yes, exactly. It is.
Yeah.
It's and look, it depends on the sum insured, it depends on the vessel's age, it depends on the crew experience, it depends on claims history. It's impossible to give anyone an indication of what it's going to cost for them. But if you want a fairly good idea, 2 to 2.5% of the sum insured.
And Dave also asked, when you were showing your video of the volcano, if there's still certain acts where they throw certain young ladies into the volcano.
I don't know about that.
Now, I had a ripper question here from Kate, and Kate did apologise earlier. She had to depart to, I think her comment was school is finishing. She had to go to get the kids. I'm concerned that we'll be slow in our 36-footer. What happens if you have a slow poke such as us?
Look, your 36-footer is probably going to be a 4.5 to 5 knot boat in moderate light conditions. And the passage is typically made up of a mixture of light and more boisterous conditions. So you won't be doing 4.5, 5 all the time. You'll be doing between 4.5 and 6.5 or 7. At the end of the day, we are happy for boats above 9 meters in overall length to join us, and we work with them until they arrive at the port of destination.
Now, this next question, I think, is probably the question of the day. As more and more people, especially with COVID and what's happening, like yourself, you're sitting at Great Keppel Island on your yacht working. Stephen has said, I work from on board and need some internet access daily. Do you have any guidance on accessibility on these rallies? It's a ripper question.
Yeah, and look, we, as you would probably understand, very reliant on internet. However, when we're on passage, we limit that to email and to our weather, which is provided via the Iridium Go and a Predict Wind subscription, and a client manager that allows us to get high volume, high yield data files in a compressed format, such as our weather information through the app, the offshore app. But for communication with the outside world, whilst we're on passage, we're limited to email. And that email is perfectly fine whilst we're at sea. When we arrive at our destinations, New Caledonia, for instance, with their aid of a booster system of some description, which we can talk about, you'll have internet in pretty much 90% of the places you're going to cruise in New Caledonia. And for 50% of those places, it will be 3G to 4G. For other places, it's going to be slow, but it will be accessible. So we just plan our movements around the demand of the internet, whether it be email, whether it be the likes of doing this, or whether it be web browsing. Does that
Very
make
good?
sense?
Yep. But as I say, I think it's a very important question these days, because a lot of people do want to do the cruising, but they don't want to be disconnected.
Yeah, look, and local SIM cards are the way to go when you arrive. It's just boosting that signal so that you get it when you're moving around.
Yeah, it's an option when we're selling the Fontaine Pajots. One of the factory options is the Wi-Fi amplifier, which is exactly for that reason.
And we've just put a flashbang one on this boat, and it's been extraordinary. We're just trialing it before we start to talk too much about it, but to date, it's really been extraordinary.
Now, I've got a question from Jeff, and I have to apologise, Jeff. I can't remember what this was in relation to. He said, for the current situation, please check the Blue Lane initiative. I think it was when you were talking about Fiji.
Yeah, so that's Jeff, who is the operations manager of Port Denarau Marina.
Okay.
I assume Jeff Deutschman, would it be?
That's correct, yes.
Okay. And he'd be saying any vessels that are thinking about going to Fiji during COVID, Fiji is open, but with restrictions and conditions, and they created what they call a Blue Lane initiative, which was reopening for COVID to private vessels.
Okay.
So the Blue Lane initiative he's talking about is covered on the Port Denarau website. and all of the entry requirements. Port General will tell you what you need to do in order to arrive in Fiji during COVID restrictions.
Very good. Okay. Another good question too about Fiji, because from my background, I used to run Sunsail, the yacht charter company, all over the Asia Pacific, and people always used to ask us, how come we can't bareboat, or how come there isn't bareboat in Fiji? and David has asked, if they don't do bareboat in Fiji, how risky is it in your own yacht? And I'll let you answer it, but I think I know the answer. Yeah.
Very good question. It's only as risky as you make it. There's things you need to do, and as long as you're aware that the charts are inaccurate, then you go about compensating for that. And that looks something like limiting your movement between daylight hours and when there's good overhead sun and it's behind you, when you're transiting areas that you're not familiar with. It's having Google overlay maps, it's having Overtel maps. Again, we talk all about this in the offshore cruising prep course, but there's a number of things that you can do to assist you to navigate safely in those waters. What's important to understand is that you can't just sit here with your chart plotter and plot a route based on the chart detail and expect to get there without bumping into something.
Good on you. Okay. And I also think part of the reason why we would never go there and set up a bareboat company, we used to talk about a lot, was also because of the interrelationship with the landowners. And as you said at the start of today's presentation, that their backyard is the water. Yeah, and it's very difficult to say, oh, let's have a bareboat charter operation in Fiji if every time someone pulls up and drops an anchor that they're going to be possibly, the chance is they may upset the locals. So.
Yeah, look, and you're so right. That's what's happening in New Caledonia with the Kanak people. There's bareboat charter vessels available in New Caledonia. People are arriving there and they're not taking the time or giving the respect to the people that's due. They're on a holiday and they're just going to have as much fun as they like, and they're throwing the empty rubbish into the water. There's cans at the bottom of the pristine lagoon when the guys go out to go fishing, the locals go to go fishing. They've had fires on the beach and thrown cans into the fire and they haven't burnt. They've just pigged the place up. And so they ruin it for everyone.
All right, next one's a good one too. This is Dave. He says, talking about the New Cal leg, as this is my focus, does the organiser adopt any form of SAR, search and rescue role, or SCEDS or whatever? Do you do any ongoing contact through the leg?
Yes, we have daily contact, be it by voice if you're a single sideband operator, or by email. And we expect position reports and situation reports to be received daily at a certain time from each vessel. We then send updated text weather information in case their own weather systems have become inoperable through equipment failure or whatever. As I say, if you've got a single sideband radio, there's the ability to do that via voice. We have a land-based mother, if you like, who is because we're sailing with the Rally, we often can't fulfil that role because we've got to keep managing our own boat and our own lack of sleep and everything else. So we have someone on land who is the person that is communicating with the fleet, and then will let me know if they feel there's something I need to be aware of, or let a vessel nearby know that the vessel nearby them is in need of assistance. So yes.
Good, very good. Then I had a couple of people telling me to keep you talking because they were enjoying what they were hearing. And then Arvin did ask, when we were talking about the Solomons, is it therefore is one to assume that the Solomons is less vulnerable to cyclones? And I'll let you answer that. I did type an answer.
Yeah, look, you need to satisfy yourself to that. As we know, we've got climate change, we've got all sorts of things going on, be it whether you're a believer in that or not. It's pretty indisputable that the weather is no longer as predicted and as easy to predict. typically, historically, that area is not affected like other areas, and it's considered to be, okay. Again, you'll have to talk to your insurer about it and see how they feel. They're going to be the ones that are probably going to make your ultimate decision for you. If they don't think it's a satisfactory risk for you to be there, then perhaps you don't want to be there.
Okay, and then I think other than that, we've then got some people saying how awesome the presentation was. Thanks, it's been great. And and yes, sorry, Keith, a good friend of mine, Keith has asked, in John's guide, does he mention if the travel lifts are able to handle cats, and if so, to what beam?
I'm not sure which guide he's referring to, but yes, in each country, you will be able to lift out catamarans. I know of a 500 lagoon that was lifted out in New Caledonia. I know of a 500 lagoon that was lifted out in Fiji and in Vanuatu in Tonga, I think. And why I say 500 lagoon is they're pretty much the beamiest one in the cruising fleet, I think. Would you say, Greg?
Yeah, exactly. You know, if you can lift 50s, you're right. You know, that's probably max size of a bareboat fleet. But
yeah, so Fiji's put in. One of the marinas there has just put in a new cat haul out facility. They've got Tonga's got trailers in the Tonga Vavau boatyard there. Vanuatu has got a boatyard there that I'm pretty sure that they've got a trailer that'll be able to do it. Look,
what about beaching?
I even saw a Brave had a gearbox failure in the Solomons, and I saw them. They had that hauled out in the Solomons, albeit quite rickety and scary looking. They got it out of the water and managed it. So yes.
I've got two questions there. One is, what about beaching? Can you beach there without getting in trouble?
Again, you're beaching in someone's front yard. You'd need to ask them and find out how they felt about that. I know that there's an area in the Mamanuca Islands in Fiji that used to be very popular with that. People were actually anti-fouling their boats there, and it was put a stop to because people weren't doing it consciously. So,
and then what about tidal range? We didn't talk about that during the presentation. What's the tides and currents like around the lagoons of New Cal and up through Vanuatu?
Tides are pretty much, and look, don't quote me, but I'm going to say a 3 metre range by and large in New Caledonia, Vanuatu and Fiji. That would be off the top of my head my experience, given that I've been talking for 2.5 hours. Currents are a whole nother thing. If you're entering lagoons via reef passes, especially the likes of the lagoon into Falunga in the Lau group, you've got a very narrow entrance and you've got a huge amount of water that's inside that lagoon that's got to escape that entrance. And if that's trying to do that at a point of tide where the reef is exposed, so it might be a outgoing tide that the reef is exposed, and now that water all has to come out of that pass instead of being able to spill out over the fringing reef, the currents can be significant. So you've got to just think about when you're going to try and enter and exit these atolls.
Very good. So, John, no more questions. There's quite a large group of people there who've sent very nice messages of thanks. So I won't go into all of them, but thank you everyone for saying thank you. It's appreciated. I think that's been brilliant today, and it's obviously gone a lot longer than a normal presentation, but it's not about just today. It's about now we've captured a whole resource of discussion that we can share and keep in the wardrobe.
And that was my intention when I created it, Greg. It just, what to leave in and what to leave out just become too difficult. And I thought, you know what, if people haven't got the time to watch it, then they're going to be able to watch it later.
Yes.
If it's not of interest to them, then they can choose not to continue to watch. But at the end of the day, I want to share as much as I can about the topic that's relevant. So there we go.
Yeah, and great. And so, John, also there's been a bunch of those questions and thank yous and that. So Rachel will be able to give you a list of those too. So you can probably in the next days ahead maybe reach out to a couple of people there.
Fantastic. Yeah, no, Al, just send me an email, anyone. I'm more than happy to chat.
So listen, we've taken up everyone's time. Thank you very much. Brilliant. And really good of you, John, to come together with us at Multihull Solutions and do these presentations. And thanks to Nigel in his absence for standing by. And we hope for both of your organisations that the COVID issue can clear itself up and you guys can have a 2021.
Mate, thank you. And look, with the continued support of the likes of yourselves, Multihull Solutions, and our other premium partners, we'll get through. And we'll be here to do it whenever the COVID says we can.